Welcome, money buddies, to this week's episode of Money Talk. This week we're talking about how to know when to stop saving, how to spend money, and how to do it confidently. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and let's get talking. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. This is going to be a great money talk about an often tricky and challenging topic, which is spending money. Today's Money Buddy is going to help us know when we have enough and when we can begin to safely spend money, as well as talk about how we can spend money safely and get out of our own little bubble and get out of our own little scarcity mindset, right? And actually use our money in a way that's going to bring value to us and potentially bring value to others. Because there is a point where it's okay to spend money that we've earned, right? That's what you have to do with money. You can either give it away, spend it, or save it. And if all we ever do is save it, what kind of a life is that? How do we spend the money that we make? It's kind of the whole point of making money. So let's get into today's episode and introduce today's Money Buddy. Today's Money Buddy is Chris Pollard. Chris is a U.S. Army veteran, West Point graduate, and principal of Great Path Planning. With over 15 years of experience in retirement income planning, tax strategy, and wealth management, he guides high net worth families through the transition of saving to living with confidence. He combines financial expertise with personal insight to help clients move beyond the anxiety and enjoy purposeful, secure lives. And he brings a lot of that experience and knowledge to us today. So I hope you all enjoy today's interview. But this week's money talking points are: 1, how important is confident spending? 2, why should we focus on more than just saving money? And 3, how can someone ever be okay with spending money? With those money talking points in mind, let's get talking and welcome Chris to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, this will be a fun conversation. I think I say that about everyone just because I love talking about money so much. So every conversation's fun when you get to host a podcast about money. But we'll kick it off today with the money talking points for this episode. And just a reminder for everyone listening, these are talking points that they're meant to be simple and easy for you to take and share with a family or friend. And then you can start your own money talks. But Chris, to kick us off today, how important do you think it is to have confident spending in our life?
I think confident spending is one of the things that will enable people to have more or less agency in their life.
Interesting.
Because often people see that as, well, I can't do that because I can't afford it. And it's almost like a default reason to not do things that may be outside of your comfort zone. Or for a lot of people, it can lead to not doing things that they've always wanted to do, and also a life of regret, right? So it's like, oh, I just said I didn't have enough money, and sometimes people actually do have enough money. I work a lot with people who overaccumulate just based on personality type and background, and then they'll be sitting on quite a bit of money, but then feeling like they cannot do what most people would consider normal, like buying a piece of furniture, a new piece of furniture, not even an expensive one, just like a normal new dresser, right? Or buying a modest car, those kinds of things. So it creates a foundation of worry for some people, and almost like a default, I can't do it because I can't afford it, is almost becomes like a money excuse for not doing some things that might be meaningful to them as a person. So that's why I think it's so crucial to say, okay, I have agency in my life, which means I can make decisions, and those decisions can have an impact on the outcomes for my life. And I can influence that in a positive way. Doesn't mean you can control everything, but you can control many things.
Yeah, and I really like just the different framing there of, are you using this as an excuse to not do things, right? You're using it as a crutch to not push yourself to grow or to experience new things. When maybe, you do have enough money to do whatever you want or whatever, right? Like, especially maybe you don't have to go to the thrift store to buy the couch. You can go to a furniture store and buy the couch. Like, you don't always have to look for the cheapest option.
Yep. Yeah, cheapest isn't always the best. I do some real estate investing myself, and I have an Airbnb, and those of us in the Airbnb community will say you can buy cheap, but then you'll cry twice, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Instead of just spending money up front for a piece of furniture that'll last, we'll say, okay, I'm going to find the cheapest thing possible, or a used thing, and then you're like, it didn't work. Now I have the headache of replacing it and spending money twice on, I could have just spent money up front. And sometimes cheapest isn't always the best option.
Like cars and things like that. Like maybe you're always trying to purchase the cheapest used car, and you wonder why it breaks down every 3 years, and you're always having to get a new car.
Yeah.
It's a tricky place to be, and that's why we need to think about our spending, and why we need to like be aware of it and focus on more than just trying to save every penny and save money all the time. Why do you think it is important that we focus on more than just saving money? There's other aspects to our money.
Yeah, I think some of this goes to black and white thinking, which is a more general psychological term for, okay, it's all or nothing, it's one way or it's the other. And there's two components of spending. It's money coming in and money going out. There's two pieces to it, but often we just focus on what's the money that's going out. And then we kind of stop it there. Well, you can also control what money comes in through career choices and other aspects to what's coming in. So when folks are just focused exclusively on the saving, it usually will tend towards the money that goes out. And for many people, that is one of the problems, right? There are people that, because of personality and background or executive functioning issues like ADHD, where they are a little more impulsive with spending. I'd say that's not the case with most Americans, where most Americans are just compulsive spenders. I would say most people just didn't put saving on autopilot. And if you can put savings on autopilot through, salary deferral into 401ks or automatic transfers into a savings account, then you don't have to be quite as on top of it and kind of having your claws in where is my money going every second of the day, which can sometimes be the case for folks. So I think making things automatic can help people relieve that focus on exclusively saving only, because if we exclusively save, we don't get a prize at the end for having the most money, right?
Yeah. You have to spend it.
Famous
to get stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and spend it. And some of it is like, well, what does it mean to spend money? Everybody has a different definition. Like, what is money supposed to be used for? Is money a security blanket? If I have a lot of money, then bad things won't happen to me. What are the things that we believe about money really is reflected in that I only focus on saving because if I have more money, I'll be fine. Well, maybe you're not fine, and maybe money isn't the solution. Money is a solution for certain problems, and then it also creates other problems, right? So when you have money, you have to figure out what to do with it. Or you can just let it sit there, right? Which is what some folks end up doing. So can we use it as a tool, not have such black and white thinking, and say, okay, what money's coming in, what money needs to go out, and can we make a positive impact on our lives and the lives of people around us by not just thinking exclusively about what am I saving and how do I need to hoard money for myself.
Yeah, I really love what you said there about get out of the black and white thinking with our money. It's not save everything or spend everything. Like there's a transition between those as you go through life. But I also loved the idea of this autopilot and automation. Like I've spoken to that a lot on the show, where if you can set it up so that your savings happens automatically, you can spend more confidently, to go back to our first question, because you know that the savings that you want to do is already set up and running. I have a client that I've helped set up like one of the bank accounts that does like the automatic paycheck separating and puts it into their pockets or vaults or whatever they are called on that app. Right. And it just makes it so that they say, wow, I have that much in my checking, and their lifestyle naturally adjusts to that amount because that's what they've like self-restricted themselves to. And I think people underestimate their own ability to adapt and adjust, especially when it comes to limiting ourselves, especially with money, because you can, like you said, put it into a 401k so it doesn't make it to you, put it into your savings account automatically, and then you see, oh, I have $1,000 left after all. That's how much I have to spend. And then you make your lifestyle work to that, and it's a whole lot easier.
Yeah, so much more easier. And then you can do the main things that need to happen first, but then also come up with a spending plan. One of the issues with budgeting, I find, and budgeting is so closely related to saving, right? It's like we budget so we can save, or we budget so we don't run out of money. Instead of, and that's always backwards looking, it can be very hard to look forwards and come up with a spending plan. Well, if I had $1,000 a month for living expenses, what would I want to spend that on so that I have good quality of life, my family has good quality of life, right? So it's being a little more intentional with the forward-looking aspect of it. And jumping ahead to some questions, but I think if we have more intentional spending of what do we want to spend money on, it allows us to focus on confident spending because we actually have a purpose. It's not just, oh, I think I'll spend money on this today, and then tomorrow I wake up, I'm feeling a little less secure, so therefore I'll not spend money today. It's a little less based on our mood and more based on, yes, I know I have X number of dollars to spend, because there's something that's meaningful for me to spend money on. Yeah. Beyond the regular, I can pay the bills and those kinds of expenditures.
Intentionality with our money is such a huge mindset shift when you're saying like, yeah, I want to do this with my money. It's what I'm planning to do with my money. And then you spend it, then you're confident in what your purchases you make. You don't have so much buyer's remorse, right? Like you can say, I wanted to spend money on that. I saved for it. I had a plan to save, and then I had a plan to spend. And when you can do both ends of that, it's a whole lot easier. And I do want to get into our mindset shifts. So I'm going to give the third money talking point to our audience for them to go out and talk with their family and friends. And that one was, how can someone ever be okay with spending money? So those of you listening, take that question and go and discuss it. But we're going to move into some more questions because I really want to get into the mindset around all this, because you mentioned moving to confident spending, being more intentional. But let's start out with where most people probably are with a scarcity mindset. What is that? Can you define that for us?
Yeah, scarcity mindset is, I think, based on probably some evolutionary biology or survival mechanism that's baked into our DNA that says there are times of famine, so we need to make sure that we'll have enough for when bad times happen. So scarcity mindset is probably best described by the expression, the other shoe is about to drop, right? Or the sword of Damocles, right? It's like this thing hanging over our head that's about to break and fall on us. And we are always anticipating a negative outcome. And some of that helped us survive for a long time when we had less stable societies. And I don't think our genes have caught up to the fact that we live in the United States and most of the developed world, something much more stable. Yeah. So we don't have to always listen to our genetics that say, hey, if you don't hoard, like the acorns, the movie Ice Age, there was that squirrel in the beginning of it that's always like trying to get that one acorn and just to his acorn collection. We keep doing that kind of that hoarding mentality that can happen. It's like, okay, there's a limited amount of resources. I don't have a way to expand my resources. What I have and what I can see and touch is what I have. That can happen in a strange way with retirees in particular, because I work with a lot with retirees. Money in an investment account feels kind of fake. Like they see the dollar amounts, and while they were accumulating, it's more like a game where you're trying to rack up points. But then once you have to pull from it, it feels like fake money.
Yeah, it does.
So we flip the script on that to try to make the scarcity go down and say, okay, there are limited resources, yes, but if we save appropriately and are prudent within our choices, we can still know that we'll probably be okay, right? We have some control over this, and it's not, hey, we'll just have a really bad winter and then everybody's going to starve to death. This is not like colonial days or earlier, right? We don't have to live like that.
Yeah, I like the picture you painted there, the fact that we live in a developed world. We live in a world where there are safety nets beyond our own that we create. Like, we're not saying don't have an emergency fund. Like, it's still important to have our own safety nets, but we also need to realize that there's still like a societal and family connections that can still provide an element of safety. If like the absolute worst were to happen, right, then we're still going to be okay. And I think when we can get out of that point, it opens us up to just an abundance of opportunities, because you then can start using your money in a way that isn't just, like you said, saving it like a bunch of acorns for hibernation or whatever is about to come. You can use your money. And yes, your investment accounts might feel like fake money, but eventually you have to move to spending that money too. How do we move from this scarcity mindset where maybe we're just trying to throw money into a pile in the corner to actually being able to confidently spend it?
The first thing that I'll ask clients about is, okay, what do you want to do? I'd like to ask clients the question, well, you haven't been asked this since elementary school, but what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think if we break it into about 4 or 5 different areas, you can kind of start to get an idea about what's meaningful for a person. And if they were to bother spending money, what would they as an individual feel like it's worth it, right? That value exchange, which is, money represents a value exchange, right? It's a way of storing value and exchanging value. So what are the things that individual wants? So I break it down into, we look at people, right? Which is who's your family, friends, and social connections and community. And if those were ideal, what would that look like for you? And then you'll pull the thread on that and say, oh, my grandkids are really important to me. I want to spend time with them, but I have some grandkids in this state, some grandkids in another state. So then I'm thinking as a planner in the back of my head, okay, we need to put a little more airline travel or group family vacations into their purposeful spending budget, right? Their spending plan, because that's super important to them, being an influence on the next generation to be good people with that have grandparents that are stabilizing and source of love that sometimes you don't get from your parents, because your parents are more interested in you being a functioning adult sometimes than a loved adult. So depending on your parents. So there's a certain amount of influence that you can have as a grandparent. And if that's really important and that comes up in their discussion with their people discussion, then you could say, okay, money for grandkids is really important. Let's bake that in. And a person that's scarce might say, oh, I can't do that with my grandkids because it's just too expensive. It's like, well, too expensive, define what is the opportunity cost.
Yeah, exactly.
And not financial, but what is the emotional, mental, and even generational opportunity cost to you not being involved in your grandchildren's life in a way that you think is meaningful and you have good relationships with them. So we have people, we have place, which is where do you live? Where do you meet the people that you care about? So what's your home look like? Where do you spend your time? And then we're going to look at activities. What are you doing in your time? So that's going to be, how do you build community? How do you spend your time? What do you do for hobbies? What do you do to recharge? And also, what do you do to expend energy? Because we can't just store up energy and constantly recharge. We need to expend our energy and have that ebb and flow of life. And then we look at what do you actually need for things, which is got to keep my house up, got to have a car, those more basic items. Can't exclude that. But if your things aren't in good condition, then maybe let's get them to a standard condition that feels sustainable and not like we're in a state of poverty all the time. And then what is well-being, right? Which is, how do you feel like you have inner growth, learning, mental engagement throughout time? So if we break it into those categories with a couple subcategories, then the client starts moving away from dollar signs into, okay, what would I want to spend money on? What's meaningful to me? What's recharging? What makes me feel engaged in community? These are the things that promote human thriving and well-being. And then we're using dollars to promote our own well-being and the well-being of those around us. So it's starting with concepts rather than dollars. If we start with dollars, it's almost like it shuts the client's brain off from thinking through, oh, what would I want to spend money on, instead of that's going to be too much. That's too much. Some people, they can't overcome that tripping for no reason. And you're just like,
It gets to $100 and it pops. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. $100 might be your limit. And you're like, well, what about inflation?
It'll always be $100. And then eventually, like, you can't go to the grocery store without spending $100.
Yeah. At some point, a latte will be $100. Just remember that. So.
Oh, man. Yeah. We'll save that quote and I'll do like, remind me in 50 years and we'll see how close you were.
Yeah.
But I love the picture you're painting about financial planning being this connection between that money and value piece, because I was at the FPA residency about 3 months ago. And that was one thing that they really drilled into us, was that this whole money thing, the dollars don't matter. And they really painted this picture, and I want to paint it for everyone listening, that the specific numbers don't matter. If you can set up your plan so that you're going to be okay, yes, that's great to make sure the numbers work. But when you can move to this point where there's values behind the way you want to use your money, you have a so much easier time, like you said, spending it. Because if that value is, I want to make sure my grandkids get to experience world culture more than me or their parents ever did. So you're always taking the family on trips and it works in your plan. So who cares how much money it costs, right? Because there's a value, it'll work. And that's really where a good financial planner comes into play, to say, yes, you can do this. Let them work the numbers, right? Let them do the math, because we're nerds and want to do the math.
Yeah.
They don't want to. And if you can connect the values with your spending, it gets so much easier to spend money. Even for like young adults or people who are still like in that saving for retirement mindset, there's still an element of this that can be at play, because if you get your numbers and your plan set up so that in the background it's just chugging along with that automation we talked about, start figuring out how you want to spend money now, because you can still have these valuable experiences. You don't have to wait till you're 60, right?
Yes. Yeah, deferring, it's one of the things that become quite apparent to me, is like always deferring good things to a future that might not come isn't a particularly fun way to live.
Yeah.
So you and the people you care about and your community could benefit if you were to think of what would make life good and can I have an influence on that? Thinking in a broader sense that's outside of myself, and instead of maybe scarcity mindset could be really well defined as like a protectionist mindset. This exclusively exists to protect me. Money's a shield, rather than money's a tool that can be used for everyone's benefit. I'm not saying you have to go give money to everyone, and often that desire for protectionism ends up, much like with other economics, hurting the country that's attempting to be too protectionist, right? Mm-hmm. Because it becomes insular, loses the global wealth growth effect, right? There's a bigger pie that we can all participate in. You got to do it prudently and with some guidelines, but exclusively saying I'm going to take my toys, play somewhere else by myself is usually antisocial and doesn't end up in good outcomes for an individual. So we shouldn't do it with money either.
Yeah, don't put yourself in like this igloo or bubble that you built with dollar bills, right? That you're just sitting there like doing your own thing. Because I love the reference you made there to this like global wealth factor that we can be a part of. And what comes to my mind there is like participating in community events. Maybe it's a $30 dinner that is like a networking dinner or whatever, because that's an easy example. And yeah, $30 might seem like a lot of money for dinner. Like you might be able to go somewhere that you like more and get a nice dinner for $30 or whatever by yourself. But there's so much value beyond money when you start getting involved in community and getting involved with people, especially whether it's the potential connections they can make or the potential even making more money off of those connections, and get like if you're working in a service base where you're trying to get clients or whatever, right? Like there's so much value in connecting with other people that if you're willing to use your money on that, like I think you're going to find that somehow you still have more money, right? Like it's interesting how that works, that global growth factor.
And there's also the factor that if you connect for the greater good, you will inherently get better business connections. Mm-hmm. If you exclusively go in to get business connections, it's going to feel forced, awkward, and can be some of those horrific networking events that we've all been to where you're just like, oh my God, stop trying to sell me, stop trying to, it's too schmoozy, I guess is
the slimy sales.
The word, right? Then saying, I'm here to be part of a community and hopefully offer something of value and then also participate in something that's beyond me. That can be so meaningful, and then it leads to business connections that are deeper and more trusting because you can see how a person acts outside of the business context. There's a lot of value that can be there for over $30, right?
Right. So. And regardless of whether it's a business setting or not, just getting involved in the community, whether it could even be free. It could be going to library events and you get to chat with a couple parents while kids are doing things, and that makes a new connection. And then you just build friendships even. Forget about like clients and referrals and whatever, but just having actual people in the neighborhood that you can call on when you need someone to watch your dog for an hour because something happened, right? Like there's those sort of connections that I think we undervalue because there's ways to pay for all of it, right? Like you could pay for someone on Rover or whatever. You could pay the boarding center, when really if people are so willing to give to each other and also use each other for their benefit, like it's, if we can establish that like value that we're trading back and forth. It's if you're borrowing tools. Who does that anymore? You just run to the store and buy the tool you need. Like you don't necessarily like call on people in your community. So just building that aspect can be extremely helpful to get out of that scarcity mindset. But I want to move us back into saving money and spending money, especially. Yeah. What other challenges besides just like building this bubble around ourselves can that hyper focus on savings?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but it's the deferral of life. And then I've had clients accumulate millions of dollars and then die early in retirement. And it's very stark to see the money didn't protect you. It's a very existential
it didn't keep
kind
you
of
alive.
Question and thought. So. It's like it didn't keep you alive. And if cancer is going to come and get you, it's going to come and get you. A lot of medical advances and certain diseases are more treatable, but sometimes it's your time to go and you don't know when that's coming. And we don't necessarily have to live in constant fear because that can create a scarcity and not spending mindset too. But we want to fill our life with good things, right? Fill our time with life, not just watching the clock run out. It's kind of like watching an hourglass go down. Like I think it's a famous scene in The Wizard of Oz. Like the witch says, when the hourglass runs down, you're going to be, dead or whatever. It's like you can kind of get, if you're just focusing on the hourglass rather than how do I get out of this or how to make this better, it's is very internal protective, like I said. And then you end up, it's almost an unexamined life where you don't occasionally pause and say, am I doing something meaningful that's meaningful to me and the people around me? Particularly, and I'd say people around me, because in America, we're very individualistic. If we're individualistically minded, I'd say we need to force ourselves to be a little bit more community minded. Whereas in other cultures, they probably should focus a little bit more on individuals because they're like, well, if I die, it's fine because, the culture will continue. It's like a little more individual agency would be nice. So I think we are so individually focused that a global focus, the scarcity mindset is one thing that stops us from doing that because it's like, I need to hoard this because I need this instead of saying, how can I live a life where I'm taken care of and everyone around me is doing okay too. And I can contribute to that, whether it's taking somebody out to dinner or just spending time with people instead of looking at spreadsheets on whether or not you're going to run out of money, what's your Monte Carlo number, and all these things that people get obsessed about in a way that may not be particularly helpful even.
Yeah. Are you tracking your net worth on a daily basis? Because if you are, that's probably just unreasonable, right? Like you can expand beyond just staring at your spreadsheet or staring at your financial plan every day to watch that investment account grow, right? If you're just sitting there watching it grow the whole time, you're going to have a really hard time when it has to go the other direction to actually live your life. But if you're involved in the community ahead of time, you're involved in networks that bring you value and that you find value in, then when it comes to flipping that script, you're like, oh yeah, I have these values that I need money to go towards. And it can be just a whole lot easier to move to that.
Yeah. And also having something there's that fear of retiring or fear of, because the money feels fake, right? So you're like, I'm not financially independent. I'll never feel that. And it's like, okay, if you don't enjoy being at work anymore, you want to put more time into your grandkids or these hobbies or give back, volunteer with your community, your church, whatever. But instead you're grinding away at work, hating your life because you don't feel like, if you hit $3.5 million in your investment account, magically you'll feel safe instead of the 3.3 that you have.
Yeah.
Like I've seen people like draw a line in the sand that brightly. And it's just like, it's probably close enough. And you're a human, you will adapt. What adaptations could you make if you stopped working to maybe adjust if things don't turn out quite as well as we think? Would you make changes?
Yeah.
Are you an adaptive person? And if the answer is no, then maybe working a little longer is appropriate. But for a lot of people, it's that, okay, if you don't like what you're doing now, let's pause. What would we like to be doing? What would be meaningful? And then let's apply dollars towards those, and I'd say automatic spending in retirement is crucial for this. So we have automatic saving that's on autopilot, right? When you're accumulating, do automatic spending where each month you get a transfer from your investment account that lands in your checking account, and that money is supposed to be spent.
Yeah.
Right. And the goal is to say, okay, my minimum checking account balance is supposed to be $5,000 a month or $10,000 period. That's my low. From my investment account, I get $5,000 each month, and I'm supposed to spend down to 10. So it goes from 10 to 15, and it just does this wave pattern. And that consistency of money coming in, that with the intention of spending it, after about a year to 2 years, usually gets someone that's a little bit more scarcity driven to feel a little more relaxed. Oh, I can spend this money. I'm supposed to. My advisor just makes it show up. It does. It comes from the investments. There's things behind it. But that is one of the things that helps people relax and be able to spend more is, okay, we're just reversing the process. You were dollar cost averaging in, dollar cost average out. And we're just going to, instead of putting money from your checking into your investments, we're just going to reverse it in a slow, steady, meaningful way. And it can really bring some of that stress down rather than, oh, I'm going to pull money out at the beginning of the year and then I got a scarcity mindset, watch my money go down. It's like starts here and goes down. Not good. Each month tends to be much better.
Yeah. That's a really great idea because we live life on a monthly basis, right? Like that's just kind of, that's how the calendar works. It's how most of our schedule works. And so I really like that automation. I love that automation is so great that it can be used on both the saving and spending side. I love setting up the technology to make that work. And one of the things that I always like to joke about when it comes to pushing people to spend more money is I always say, whatever you don't spend, I'm going to charge as a fee and just take. So spend it, right? If you don't spend it, it's my money now. You have to donate it to me. I heard one planner say that they'll set it up so that whatever they don't spend, they have to donate to a cause that is just the complete opposite of anything they support. Like they have to donate it to the opposite political party or whatever, right? If they don't spend it. And so that can encourage people to be like, oh, it'll light a fire under them or whatever, right? And it's all in joking. You're not going to actually like take someone's money. But it can be that serious to a point where people just will not spend money. And it's crazy to get people out of that mindset. But once you do, their life kind of unlocks in both directions. Like once you can get people to a point where they are willing to save for retirement, their life kind of unlocks in a way that, oh, I'm going to be okay. And you're able to take a deep breath and use your money that's beyond that in a way that's meaningful, and then you can flip it. I really like that idea of switching that around. I want to talk as well about moving into this transition of being more comfortable with spending money. And I know we've mentioned, like, don't worry so much about the dollar amounts, find your values and spend according to those. But I'm sure there's people asking that, like, oh, I feel like I'm right on the precipice of being more comfortable with spending, but they can't get out of that mindset. Is there a way we can know a dollar amount or a way we can know when it feels like there's enough to make the transition to spend money?
Yes. I think one of the things that helps people spend the money the most is having an appropriate emergency fund. Because the investments feel like they're something you're not supposed to touch. But an emergency reserve in a checking or savings account tends to feel like it's more accessible. It's real money, because at the money at the bank, you could always go and get physical dollar bills. For those of us that remember how to use money,
I don't know
cash,
what cash is.
it's becoming, we're becoming cashless. But we believe that money in a bank account is more real than money in an investment account, because the value isn't fluctuating other than bank fees, what money we put in, what money we pull out, right? Like, we feel more like we have the control over it. And I think if we have appropriate emergency fund levels, that will help people spend. Now, there's the trick of how do you get someone to pick an appropriate number? There's the multiple of monthly expenditures you could do, which is like 3 to 6 months of living expenses. The other way I'll back into that is just ask somebody, what's the biggest emergency you've ever had in your life and how much did it cost? And they'll say, oh my God, I got in a car accident and I had to pay a deductible. I'm like, oh, how much was the deductible? And like $1,000. So that was $1,000. We need at least $1,000 for your emergency fund. What about what's your deductible on your health insurance? Like, oh, $10,000. Okay, we need at least $10,000. You'll find that depending on where your area and country is, if people have $10,000 to $20,000 in a savings account all the time, it takes care of any crazy emergencies. Most things that break on a house are going to kind of cost that, depending how big your house is. If you have to redo a roof, that's roughly the cost. Putting it in terms of that really can unlock for some people the spending that they could be doing. The trick to that, though, is to not let the emergency reserve turn into
your spending account.
Either a spending account or everything's an emergency. Anything that could happen is an emergency. Oh, one day I might need to go into a nursing home, so I need $500,000 for that. And then I had a client that was doubling it. So she's like, well, that's my nursing home money. And then she had another account. She's like, that's my nursing home money too. I'm like, how much would you need for a nursing home? Probably. Call it $750,000, $300,000, whatever the number is. The number wasn't really relevant. She had double it because she was like, she was just mentally earmarked both accounts for it without even saying, oh, that's $1.5 million for a nursing home. Maybe. But we would probably make changes in other areas if we saw that coming. It's not like all of a sudden you're asked to write a check for $750,000 usually.
That's exactly what I was going to hit on, is you will make changes in these other areas. Your cash buffer doesn't have to be the only thing weathering the storm, right? There's those other safety nets. Maybe you do have family that's also good with money. And if you were truly in that, like, everything's going wrong situation, I would like to think that family's going to step up a little bit and help. And if you have investments, you adjust your spending so that maybe you're not using everything that comes into your account because, things are happening right now. You went to the hospital, you'll have more hospital bills, right? I like the idea of the deductibles, right? Because if you have your insurance set up in a way that's proper and covers you well, then that's supposed to be all the money you need, right? It doesn't have to be as complicated as like, oh, I have $60,000 in cash because, like, say something did happen and you got in that car accident, you have a $2,000 deductible, and then there's maybe still some more stuff that comes on the other side of that. There's ways to extend out that purchase. Like, say you do put it on a credit card, you still have 30 days or whatever till any sort of interest accrues. And maybe that's enough for you to take a deep breath, find the money elsewhere, adjust your spending. It goes back to the point I made at the very beginning that we underestimate how adaptable we are in emergencies and when we have to actually spend money.
Yeah. We overestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years, underestimate what we can do in a short period of time, and kind of limit ourselves to be like, oh, I wouldn't make that change. It's like, well, I think if you want to ask a client, like, how adaptable are you? When was a time in the past when you felt comfortable with money and felt secure? And if the answer is never, then it's personality driven. So it's like high neuroticism as a personality trait. If you're looking at the big five, right? That may just be their personality. Other people will be like, well, when I first graduated from college, things were really tight and I had my first job, but you know what? I made it work. And I'm like, do you think you could find a way to make it work now? And then they say, yeah, I probably could. Most people will say I probably could. If they say I can't, then you say, oh, well, what makes you not feel able to make adaptations now? And then you can get them to talk through it and they may reflect like, oh yeah, I wouldn't want to maintain $1 million house if I had no money coming in, right? So maybe I would sell the house. I wouldn't want to, but I guess I could. It's not the end of the world, right? If it came to it, right? So giving the people that agency is probably one of the biggest aspects of this. Scarcity, purposeful spending, because that is, people call it a victim mentality. Victim mentality can be like very accusatory. It can sometimes use as a stick against people. I think it's more about agency. Does the person believe that they can make changes in their life that will have a positive or negative impact? Is it only external factors that determine what happens in life. And I think it's a mix of both, and whatever we can do to increase agency usually ends up with better outcomes.
Yeah, I love that. If you realize that you have control over your situation and that you can do things to adjust. Like, I was thinking about when my wife was in PA school for just over 2 years. We were only living on my income, which was in marketing wasn't fantastic compared to what she's making as a PA now that she's out of it. Yet we went that whole 2 years living on a smaller income, taking on student loan debt. We still came out in a good situation. So like, if something were to happen, can we go back to those habits and go back to that situation where maybe we do end up having to move to a cheaper apartment, right? Like, there's so much lifestyle creep that we allow to just take our money away that we don't think we can ever go back from. But if it really came down to it, we could figure it out and we'd be okay. I love that picture. Like, you're going to be okay. You'll adapt and adjust, and that's fantastic. But you mentioned agency as being a key tool here. And this will be one of our final questions, is to give people stuff that they can go and do and use to start spending money more confidently. What tools do you usually help people with to make some progress towards spending money confidently?
So I'll have people, as I talk about those areas, the people, place, things, activities, and wellness, write those things down. You want to write down what you would want to do and what would make those areas ideal, right? And then once you have them ideal, then you pause, do not put numbers to them yet. And then maybe in the next day, write out, okay, if I were to do this, what would make that possible, right? So if somebody's like, look, I need to build better community connections, so I need to go out to lunch with a friend or a colleague once a week, right? Okay, so we're going to bake that in the budget. Our eating out budget's going up. So we're going to know with the clients what their baseline budget is. We have them do a little spending spreadsheet. Say, what do you normally spend money on a day-to-day basis and a monthly basis? Do that, and then look for that specific item. Right, and say, okay, because community is important, it promotes your well-being, and you're no longer working or you're between jobs now, and your lack of community is really stressing you out. Let's use some of your savings to relieve that and build quality of life with the money, right? Use that store of value, apply it to another value, which is community, and shift where we're spending money, but also making sure the client's kind of doing it. So we write it out. What do we actually want to do? What is values driven? Then what's the reality of what we're doing today? And then what should we be spending it on? If we're going out to lunch once a week, if it's 15, 20 bucks, whatever it is, 30 bucks with inflation, depends on what state you're in, right? But what's that number that builds the value? And just double check that you're actually doing it, right? And then one of the things that we'll do is, like, once a year, just sit down and saying, okay, if I'm looking over these different facets of life and then the kind of the subcategories, what am I doing there? Am I actually doing things that are meaningful to me? And we should all over ourselves, as the expression is, right? It's like, I should be doing this. I should be doing it. Don't be like, I should. Pick one thing that you think you might actually do and do consistently. And what you do consistently is going to be much more important than always thinking about what you should be doing. Because should is kind of a way of consenting to the fact that you could do something else, but you probably won't.
It's a no in the long run of things. And I like that idea there. Find one thing that you can do and start with that, because then you can begin to build practice with this. And you can see that it's good to spend money in that way and good to spend money that aligns with my values. And I love the idea of starting with values. That's where I want to leave this episode on there, of start with your values and then build everything behind it to ways that hit on those values and that you can have true meaning in your life and use your money in a way that's going to bring you value. I have two final questions here for you in just a second. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I'm hoping as we discuss this topic that sometimes folks will say, hey, this is like first world problems, like boohoo for you have too much money, you don't know how to spend it. That's another way of shaming. You can shame people for having no money. You can shame people for having too much money, because a lot of that is very subjective. And money shame is one of the things that will also make people live scarcely, because they don't want to necessarily show that they have money. I think if we look at money as a tool, a store of value that can be applied to not just monetary values, right, or paper value, but actual values in some intangibles, that mindset shift can help us ignore the shame aspect of it and saying, okay, when we come from a culture that has a lot of puritanical values, for better or for worse, and like strong work ethic and save money and live frugally, those things work for certain times. And then at other times, we need to know how to adapt, right? Yeah. So I'd say don't necessarily let this first world problem shaming be the thing that stops you from saying, I could make a positive impact for myself and the people I care about and my community if I were to think a little bit bigger about this.
Yeah.
And make sure that people have an examined life. Don't do what I call navel gazing, right? You're just looking at your belly button all the time and not doing anything with your life.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally say, you got to zoom in, zoom out, right? Just look down and saying, am I doing with my life what I think is meaningful, important? And then zoom out, because you might focus on something you think is meaningful, important, and someone might be able to divert you to something that is actually even more meaningful and important if you would engage with community. So I'd say that's two very strong aspects that I say is making sure you have agency, and then also make sure you engage with community, because community is one of the things that keeps us from really maintaining that scarcity mindset.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's a great place to leave it on. And the two main takeaways that I'm having is we're able to adapt more than we think, and we're going to be okay. And then get involved with other people and get out of your own little bubble with money and start using it in a way that brings you real value. But Chris, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Two final questions here for you. The first one's going to be just how can people connect with you if they had any questions or wanted to reach out?
Sure. They could either email me at chris.pollard@greatpath.com, or they could check out my company website, greatpath.com, or they could connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look up Chris Pollard, CFP, Great Path. You'll find me there.
Awesome. Links, of course, always in the show notes. Last question here for you, Chris. What's one thing that you wish you had known when you were maybe just getting started with money or much sooner about spending money confidently?
I would wish that I'd given myself a little more wiggle room with, it's okay to giving myself a spending money budget each month, even if it's tiny, like $10 to go buy candy or whatever, giving yourself a little freedom so that you're not just black and white thinking, it's all saving, all spending, because then you just splurge, right? You go from saving to splurging. That's what my personality type is for money.
Yeah,
instead,
that's fantastic.
We're going to do both. We're going to do some saving and some
that's
spending to enjoy life along the way.
At the very end here, just enjoy it. Find a balance so that you're not blowing all your money or you're not saving it all. But Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you. Thanks.
What a fantastic conversation that just was. I really enjoyed that interview with Chris, and I hope all of you listening enjoyed it as well. I honestly don't have a lot of follow-up here at the end of the episode because we hit on so many great points, and that was a pretty lengthy interview that I wanted to make sure you got to hear all of it. So not a lot of follow-up today. That third money talking point that we didn't get to, make sure you go and talk about that with a family member or a friend. But thank you so much to Chris for coming on the show. That's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that money talk because we really hit on a lot of key principles when it comes to using your money well and being confident with using your money as a tool. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I really feel like money and using our money is beginning to evolve in a very great way to a point where we're finally realizing it's a tool to accomplish our goals and values. So what goals and values do you have? I'm going to have that be today's main action item. Figure out what value you want to start spending money on, and then do it. Spend money in a way that you can truly enjoy the money that you're using. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment or send an email. I would love to help any of you figure out how to spend money confidently. So please reach out to me, or you can reach out to Chris. All the links to Chris's information are in the show notes. And please share this episode with a friend so we can continue to have great money talks with one another. And then go out and have a money talk. Thank you for listening to today's episode. The best way to stay up to date and connected with all things Money Talk is to subscribe to the podcast. Have a question or a comment? You can find links in the show notes to email me or leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube. And if you're looking to get started with budgeting, sign up for a Money Talk today, and I'd love to work with you and help you with your budgeting. The link is in the show notes. And if you're a young adult or no one in your life who could benefit from some great financial planning advice, check out Financial Planning for Young Adults right where you're listening to this show. And remember, the best way to learn from today's episode is to go and have a money talk about today's topic with a fellow money buddy. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Money Talk. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Money Talk. This show is provided for informational and entertainment purposes and may not be specific to your unique situation. Please be sure to do additional research before making any financial decisions.